Welcome back everybody to my mini-series of behind the scenes and my technical side of some of the tracks that I've been creating recently. Now today I'm going to be talking about combining virtual and live instruments. Using live instrumentation is key in making your pieces sound original. The idea behind that is the fact that anyone can buy a sound library, but having that unique individual quality from a live instrument can just make your track sound that little bit more individual. Even though making music via your computer and its virtual instruments can be considered more cost effective, sort of especially for the self-contained artists, it doesn't really need to be like a high-end studio recording to get the effect that you want. For most of my general recordings, I actually use my H2N recorder. Hello. And it's a really simple piece of kit because I can carry it anywhere. I think with my style I can get away with that level of microphone. If I were to move into a more acoustic sound or have a piece that concentrates on one particular more acoustic or traditional instrument, I would probably need a higher end microphone to capture the instrument at its best quality. Having any live instrumentation in your piece can just add that interest. It adds that uniqueness to the sound. The human quality of that sound is really imperfect, it's raw, which adds that unpredictability to the sound that a virtual instrument wouldn't have. Now, a lot of the time I found that if I start writing a piece with MIDI or sort of virtual instruments, and then I don't experiment with live instrumentation, you can almost just get used to that sound. You can't really hear how flat it might sound without experimenting with that live quality to then hear if it makes it sound better. It's best not to get used to listening to your song arrangements that depend almost exclusively on virtual instruments, because it can sometimes turn out a little bit soulless. Now, I come obviously from a very soundtrack-based background, so obviously that doesn't apply to every single genre. You may not hear the difference in tone immediately, but mixing those live and virtual instruments together is just a winning formula for a soundtrack. Now, in this piece, I started using the hard rock guitar in Logic. In its early form, it was basically the hard rock guitar layered up where I played it into my keyboard just so that I could try and get the sound right. The guitar was the main focus of this piece, so getting that aspect of this arrangement correct was really important. It was really significant to the overall feel and emotion of this piece. Now, before I start kind of rambling on about how important live instruments can be, I'm actually just going to play you the difference that it makes within this piece. The reason I'm going to solo just the guitars is because we're not really focusing on the other sections at the moment. So it's easier for us to hear the difference if we just have those individual tracks soloed. This is a section of the track with just the virtual instruments soloed. So I recorded a lot of these tracks by just playing into the keyboard to try and get my melodies and my tracks in place before then recording over the top with the live instruments. Now I'm going to play you that same section, but just with the live guitar playing. So this is what I recorded over the top of those MIDI tracks to give it that uniqueness. So now let's have a listen to them together. Can you hear how much better that sounds with them both mixed together? Using that simple mixture of layers and textures within Logic and using those effects on top of it can just create a really good piece. Simple lines of music layered correctly can just swell to a really nice sound. Now, the setup that I have here at home is actually quite a simple setup. I've got my laptop with Logic installed, so that's my main platform. but then I do have a few other bits of equipment. I've obviously got my MIDI keyboard, which is a very simple MIDI keyboard, nothing fancy. Now, one of my more advanced pieces of equipment, I actually just got really cheap off a mate. It is vastly overqualified for what I need to do, but it's got a lot of features that just make it really simple to record things. So the interface I have is the Behringer Xenix Q1202 USB. As I said, it is very overqualified for the setup that I really need, but I got it cheap, so I was like, why not? There isn't any fancy setup, there isn't really anything that you have to do except for plug in and then go. It's got a huge number of features that I just do not use enough of, but I'm all about convenience with equipment. With this, I've just been able to pack it up and take it wherever I'm going to be able to record something. It's a pretty sturdy piece of equipment, and it's a really quick and easy way for me to record something onto my laptop if I don't have the comforts of my home studio. Now, in this piece, it was quite convenient because all I had to do was just record the raw output of the guitar. I didn't need that hassle of having to record through a microphone for a specific effect or an amp. I just needed the guitar sound. Now, I know a lot of you out there probably sat there going, I should have recorded through an amp, but at the time, with the time frame that I had for this project, I knew that I was going to be putting a lot of effects on afterwards, so I just wanted a quick recording of a guitar that I could then effect. Due to the style, and also my style, I knew that I was just going to be messing around with the sound anyway. And I know this is one thing that I keep on saying like every single video, but you've really got to be thinking about what sound you actually want. What do you want to achieve with these instruments that you're using? If you do want to go more of the natural sound, then you do need a good recording of a live instrument. Of course, there are loads of good sound libraries out there that do sound amazing, but having your own recording just puts you above the rest of the tracks. Make sure the original source of your recording is as good as possible. No amount of mixing and editing is going to change a bad recording. You'll probably just end up getting really frustrated anyway and spending too much time on something that you could just have fixed in the recording process. With a lot of instruments, your recording is only as good as your musician. If they don't know how to achieve the right effect, then it's not going to turn out very well. You want to make sure what you've written on the score comes out sounding as good as possible. Do some research into the instrument that you're recording for. Think about their range, and if it's extreme, then ask the player if they can actually play that. And if they can't, either find a new musician or ask them to practice that. Prepare them for what you want them to record. Think about the different techniques that they're going to be needing to be able to play the piece. You just don't want the musician to turn up and not be able to play what you've written. Whether that's because the musician just isn't advanced enough, or it's just because you've been an idiot and you've written something that that instrument cannot physically play. Musicians can be really expensive, so you don't want to make that mistake. Do your research and make sure that score is perfect. When you're creating a track like this, by layering those sounds and those textures, think about that overall sound. Start like I did by creating those melodies and textures with your virtual instruments, and then build it with your live instruments. There's no point recording that live instrument when you haven't finalised the sound. I know it sounds really obvious, but I've seen many people make that mistake, and then they just have to go back and record it again, wasting more time. Take time to balance those sounds correctly. Too much sound from the virtual instruments and it will just sound really fake. But then if you haven't mixed the live in there correctly, it just sounds like it shouldn't be there. Explore your arrangement at a deeper level of editing, because that live instrumentation can just add so much depth to your piece, and it will make a huge difference. I really hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble on about how important live instruments are, and I hope you noticed how different it actually made my piece sound. When it comes down to it, live instruments can just do a huge world of good to your piece, and can just set your track in that higher level of production value. When it comes down to it, working with your musicians is probably one of the best things you can do as composers. It advances your arrangement skills, your composing skills, and also your social skills. I really hope that helped, and as always, if you have any other questions, then just pop them in the comments below and I'll answer them as soon as possible. If you head over to my channel, you'll see videos on the psychological haunting subgenre and how to create dread and fear in your pieces with pitch. You'll also see me explaining what the action subgenre actually is and how it links in with the sound that I've created in this piece. And if that didn't interest you, then I also cover the thriller subgenre, covering what the sound includes and how to create a really good melodic hook. Alright, till the next time guys, bye!